Hello again, and welcome back to Legally Cited. This is Jesse, and I am back for another assistive technology related video. I'm not going to be covering any specific assistive technology product in this video, but I want to cover a topic that I do get asked about a fair bit online, and even in my day job, quite a bit. And I also see people commenting and just having interesting thoughts on the topic online. And that is, I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently. I'm going to say, which operating system, accessibility wise, is right for me? I will probably try to clean that up a little bit for the title of the video to make it flow a little bit better, a little bit shorter. But accessibility wise, which operating system is right for me? I will admit, this is not my original idea, but I think it's a great one. I actually watched a video from The Blind Life. Sam from The Blind Life YouTube channel did a similar video on this recently as I'm recording this. And, like I said, I've been asked this question a lot myself. When I meet with people through my day job, I've been, asked this online on social media, emails and such. And I also hear people just, throwing their own thoughts out there, which is perfectly fine. But I just wanted to touch on this topic myself because I like what Sam had said in his video. And I'd like to expand on that a little bit more and give some of my own thoughts and practical experience advice on the matter. And that way I can point people to, if they ask that kind of a question, check out this video. And I will leave a link in the description for the Blind Life YouTube channel. I highly encourage you to go check that channel out as well. He does a lot of assistive technology videos for blind and low vision, whether that's, software or phone apps or devices, CCTVs, any number of different things like that. It's a really good channel. I've followed his channel for quite a while, and it used to be the blind spot, but then he changed it to the Blind Life a while back. And I've also worked with him in real life in the past. We're part of a Microsoft Low Vision advisory group. If you missed it, I will also put a link in the description for a recent episode of the Next Gen Access podcast, where both Sam and I were interviewed, or panel members, as a blind and low vision, or a low vision panel, where we talked all things low vision accessibility for computers and mobile and all that kind of a stuff, along with Carry On Accessibility. Huge shout out to her because she's doing some really cool stuff as well. But so yeah, and I'm not going to say what is the best accessible operating system, because spoiler, there really isn't one. It's more complex than that. It's more nuanced than that, and that's not the way I'm going to word it. Although that would probably get more clicks. It's like, oh, this person's going to talk smack about whatever operating system. No. It really boils down to a lot of different factors, and that's what we're going to kind of chat a little bit about here today. And for convenience sake, I'm going to leave it to the big four operating systems: Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS. I know we have things like Chromebook and many, many distributions of Linux out there. I do have a little bit of experience with both. Back in the day in college, I used Debian Linux for a while for a couple of classes. And, I'm sure it's changed a lot since then. But like I said, I don't want to speak on as an authority on things I'm not particularly familiar with. And I know there are Linux screen readers, and especially if you are somebody who likes to tinker around and do all kinds of cool things, and you want to set up a server, you want to do all kinds of interesting stuff, like Linux is a really, really cool operating system. Chromebook, I know a lot of schools use, and I totally understand why they do, because they're a lot easier to maintain, they're cheaper generally, and you're basically, using just web services. You're using the G Suite, Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Classroom, any other website kind of things. You don't have to worry about near as much local device maintenance. I totally get why they do it. But as far as accessibility wise goes, I know they have some built-in magnification, they have some built-in speech, but it's not going to be near as comprehensive. You're not going to have near the options you do on either like a Windows or Mac operating system. So those are why I'm not really covering Chromebook or Linux in this video. Just lack of regular use, and in some cases familiarity for myself. And I think, again, your Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, those are the main ones that probably 95% of people are going to want to be looking into. So it really boils down to a few different things. It's like, again, you're not just looking at accessibility. You're looking at, what do I need it for? How much money do I have to spend? Do I have any existing devices that I just didn't even know had accessibility features? I can't tell you how many times I meet with people in my day job where I meet with them to do a technology assessment and start showing them things that are built into iOS or Android or Mac or Windows. And they're like, I didn't even know that was there. So, they may have a device they can already even just start using and not have to shell out for a bunch of money. So what do they have? What are they going to use it for? How much money do they have if they want to invest in a new device? How easy is it to learn? What kind of supports do you have? Not just like technical support or online tutorials, manuals, that kind of a thing, which is important, but also, how many people around you use that? Like, do you have a bunch of friends that all use Windows? Do you have a bunch of family members or something that use iOS or Android? Or do you have visually impaired friends that use a certain platform? I'm not saying that that's the reason you should go with one operating system over the other. In fact, I wouldn't, there are times where I definitely wouldn't do that. But so, like I said, big four. I want to go into some advantages and disadvantages and things to consider for all four of these. And we're going to start with computers. And I'm going to start with the Mac. Admittedly, that's probably the one I'm least familiar with. I mean, I do use it. Not a ton, but I do have a Mac laptop that I use through work for testing and evals and things like that. And before I go any further, I should also mention, people might be wondering, what makes you an authority? What makes your opinion matter, anything? Well, it doesn't necessarily, these are just my opinions. These are my thoughts. But I base it on a lot of experience. For one, I've been legally blind all my life. I have low vision, and I use a combination of magnification, dark themes, high contrast, screen readers. I've been using that type of technology all my life. And I have been professionally in the assistive technology field for, I would say, at least 15 to 20 years at this point. Yeah, I know I'm old. I mean, I started when I was in college. I was working with the disability services and helping other students. I got paid in college to help other incoming students who were blind or visually impaired figure out what technology they needed and get them started on, what we were using. I worked with instructors and other faculty who were literally making little programs that they use, especially like there were some math programs and things that were exclusive to our school because we were like the first laptop university in the nation at that point. And I created a help system for one. I made sure that they were accessible. I worked for their instructional technology center and helped make sure that the course materials and course websites and things were accessible to students. And then I worked in a library for a year through AmeriCorps, working with their assistive technology workstation, trying to get people to come in and use it, show them how to use it. I worked as an assistive technology trainer for about 3.5 years for a nonprofit. And for the past almost 15 years, good God, man, I have been working as an assistive technology specialist, where I work with adults and now students, high school and early college students who need assistive technology for school, for work, for whatever. And then, of course, the YouTube channel and streaming and game accessibility work that I've been doing over the past several years. So, yeah, those, I would say, I have some experience. So back to the big four. Again, we're going to start out with the Mac. And, there's a lot of things that the Mac does well. A lot of people will say, oh, they were the first to really implement accessibility native into their operating systems. And I would partially agree with that. Windows has had accessibility forever. Microsoft has had DOS accessibility, Windows accessibility, but they mostly relied on third-party programs, something like JAWS or WindowEyes back in the day, Zoom Text. Around Windows 98, they started putting accessibility into their operating systems, but it was very, very, very minimal at best. And we'll talk more about that in the Windows section. But the Mac, I would say they were probably one of the first to do it more comprehensively, both with iOS in 2007, I believe, and I'm trying to remember what year they put VoiceOver natively into the Mac. Like they had, if you go way back, way back, I remember, I think it was called Orca. I remember using an old version of Mac somewhere where they had, no, it was Outspoken. Orca was, I think, the Linux one. Outspoken, I think it was called. And that was their sort of built-in, or that was one of their screen readers that they had. And then it went away. And so for a while, Mac people were out of luck. And then VoiceOver came in and started doing it pretty well. I would say arguably better than Narrator ever did for quite a while. So when people say, oh, well, the Mac is the best because they've had built-in accessibility forever. Well, they did a pretty comprehensive job, or at least a more comprehensive job early on. But I would argue in recent times, you go look at forums online. A coworker of mine who's totally blind, he is a huge Mac fan. He's been a huge Mac user for years. And even he has been hesitant to recommend the Mac to our customers as much recently, because if you're looking at a situation where you need your computer for productivity, be it school or employment, VoiceOver, Apple has really been concentrating on iOS and iPadOS a lot more recently, and I don't know if they've really put as much devotion into the Mac. There's been long-standing bugs. There's been some freezes here and there. I know people talk about like the Safari freezing. Some say it's gone. Some say it's still there. But there's just this kind of, I would say, degradation in the level of blind accessibility on the Mac. I just hear a lot more people having problems with it. Now, again, I don't use the Mac super regularly. I do use it, from time to time, but it's not my daily driver by any stretch of the imagination. So, it's one of those things that I go to when I need it. Um, but I'm much more comfortable, and for work and for personal, it's just Windows is what I use most. That being said, I mean, in theory, Apple has a great advantage because they do integrate VoiceOver. They do integrate Zoom into their operating system, and they have for years. For a while, VoiceOver was actually really fantastic. Like, it did a really good job, and I still say, like, if they could get rid of their bugs, I would say that VoiceOver is still maybe a little bit ahead of Narrator as far as built-in screen reader capability and functionality. Now, Narrator has gotten better in the last few years, definitely. But VoiceOver for Mac has actually been pretty good, both for, speech stuff and for Braille support. They've long since supported refreshable Braille refreshable Braille displays. Their magnification software or features, Zoom, I would argue is behind Windows, especially now. When you look at both the magnification part of it and visual enhancements part of it, you have a decent core there. You can turn it on, you can zoom in and out, there's an invert feature, but that's really about it. You can make the mouse pointer bigger, but that's really about it. From what I can tell, Apple really hasn't done too much with the Mac Zoom. And I almost wish they would call it something different, because you have, when you say Zoom, there's like Zoom for iOS, Zoom for Mac, and then you have the Zoom meeting client that everybody now uses, especially after the pandemic. I wish they would maybe have a slightly different name for it or something, but it's basic. It'll get the job done, but there's really not a lot of bells and whistles for it. The other thing that I would say is that on the Mac side of things, you have to keep in mind pretty much what Apple has for accessibility is what you get. There aren't a lot of third-party options for blind and low vision accessibility. There was a short time where they had Zoom Text for Mac. Even that has been discontinued several years ago, unfortunately. So that's no longer a thing. So if you run into a website that you need for school, for work, for personal, whatever, and VoiceOver isn't working well with it, or Zoom just isn't working, you need a little bit more visual customization than Zoom offers or that the Mac operating system offers, you're kind of out of luck. I've heard something about somebody trying to make some kind of a screen reader for Mac, but I think if from my understanding, it's very, very early in production or concept, and I have no idea really how far along it even is. But I've heard little spurts of rumors about that for a while. But basically, I said, if it works with the built-in tools, you're great. If it doesn't, you're kind of out of luck, and you don't have a lot of options. As far as VoiceOver goes, one thing, again, that I will really praise them for is a lot of people they might want to use the Mac, and they come from iOS. And one thing that I really like about VoiceOver is, especially if you're totally blind and don't really use the mouse anyway, you can turn a feature on called Trackpad Commander. And for people who don't know all the keyboard commands for the Mac, but maybe are familiar with iOS, you turn your trackpad commander on, and now your trackpad doesn't move your mouse around, but instead it works like a virtual touchscreen for your Mac. So now you can use most of your touch gestures that you're already familiar with, your flicks, your drags, your 2-finger, 3-finger gestures. You can use those just like you would on your iPhone. You can go forward and backward. You can switch rotor elements. You can bring up your item chooser. You can do all of those types of things the same way you would do them on iOS. And that's really cool, because if somebody does need to learn the Mac and they just, they might take a little while to learn some of the keyboard shortcuts, it's a great kind of a way to bridge the gap. And even for me, as someone who doesn't use the Mac as often, I find it useful myself, because I use iOS every single day with VoiceOver. And for me, sometimes, it's just easier to turn the trackpad commander on and go just flick and go wherever I need to really fast. So that's something that I think is really innovative and really cool for the Mac operating system. So, like I said, the built-in tools are great. You can use the Mac out of the box. You can turn VoiceOver on. And I don't know if it's changed, but last time I looked, unfortunately, the weird quirk about Zoom on the Mac is that the first time you use it, you actually have to go into the settings and check the box for enabling the keyboard shortcut. When you turn a Mac on for the first time out of the box, you can hit your VoiceOver command to turn VoiceOver on. Boom, you're good to go. But if you try the keyboard shortcut to turn the Zoom feature on, it didn't work. And that was because you had to go into the settings menu and turn on check the checkbox to allow the keyboard shortcut, which is, I think, is really dumb, in my opinion. I sincerely hope they've changed that since, because if they let you turn on VoiceOver out of the box, why would you take that away from low vision users and not be able to turn Zoom on with their keyboard shortcut? If they haven't fixed that, they really, really ought to. So that's kind of an overview of the Mac. Good, bad, and in between. There are bugs. It's got a lot of potential, but I know a lot of people aren't as happy with some of the bugs and performance. Especially, I think it's more related to the M1 or the M series devices is where VoiceOver is having trouble. Like if you get an Intel device, I think they're meant to work with those pretty well, but it's something with the way that VoiceOver is working, I think with the M series, that is giving people a lot more issues. But it's got some great stuff. There's some stuff that, of course, it needs improvement. No operating system's perfect. And now we move on to Windows. It has its own strengths and weaknesses. Now, the first thing that I would say is use case, before we even get into the accessibility part of it. One of the reasons that not just me, but our organization, when we work with people as technology specialists, we often recommend Windows or people learning Windows, is because when you look at the employment side of things, when you look at getting a job out of high school or college, Windows is going to be used by the vast majority of businesses. There are some artistic fields, or if you work in Mac development or iOS development, or certain other things, you might encounter a Mac. But I mean, working with businesses for the past 10 to close to 15 years now, I can count on one hand probably the number of businesses that have actually used the Mac. So I would say if you want to not be another blindness statistic, I mean, the employment rate or unemployment rate, however you want to look at it, for blind and visually impaired individuals is horrible right now. And that's a whole other topic that I could rant about for days. But if you want to become employed, like I said, the vast majority of businesses are going to probably run in the Windows environment. So it's probably a good idea to be not only familiar with, but very comfortable using that type of environment, because the business, they're going to say, hey, can you use our software? Can you use our website? They're not necessarily going to say, can you use your Braille note? Can you use your note taker? You're going to have to use mainstream technology. So that's one of the reasons that we do recommend Windows machines a lot to people. I would also say, even for entertainment wise, it is getting better. The Mac is getting better, but if you are interested in gaming, I would also argue that Windows is a much better option, because there are probably more games designed for blind players, like audio games and such, screen reader accessible games that are designed for Windows users. I know there are a few that are out on the Mac, but I would hazard a guess to say there are probably more for Windows. And now in the past several years, you've gotten many mainstream games that are also becoming accessible, from indie games like Sequence Storm, to Brock the Investigator, to As Dusk Falls, AAA games like The Last of Us, Mortal Kombat 1, Forza. These are all huge games, and they're blind accessible, and they come out for Windows and consoles, of course, but we're looking at computers here. And so yeah, I mean, whether for work or for play, those are some good cases to support Windows. The other thing that I would say is, we already touched on it for the Mac, is you have Zoom, you have VoiceOver, but if those don't work, you're kind of out of luck. Windows, you've got a lot more options. Of course, you have the built-in Windows magnifier, which I use every single day. I've really grown to love it. You have Narrator that is built in. Now, people say, oh, Narrator's a piece of crap or whatever. Now, it used to be, like I said, when I was talking in the Mac section, around Windows 98, I think it was like 98 SE is when they first started with Narrator. And even Magnifier, like I think Magnifier started in XP, and both were terrible. The voices in Narrator were terrible. You had Microsoft Sam, which was, I always called it Microsoft Sven, because his voice was just so garbled and awful. Magnifier would only magnify that one strip at the top of the screen. It was basically there to be like, hey, if you don't have anyone around, you need to get access to something before you put your screen reader on your computer, or before you put your screen magnification software on your computer. This might get you there, but that's about it. But in Windows 7, going forward, especially Windows 10 and 11, Microsoft has greatly improved Magnifier and Narrator. Could you use Narrator as a daily driver? Maybe not. I would still much prefer to use even NVDA over that. But it works pretty well in Edge. If you need to go out and use the internet on somebody else's computer and all they've got is, a narrator, you can go into Edge and navigate the internet pretty well. You can get around the operating system reasonably well. I think you could even get around like Word okay. I haven't really done it a whole lot, but you can. But you don't just have Narrator and Magnifier. For magnification, you have Zoom Text. You have Fusion. For screen reader, you have NVDA. You have JAWS. And for both magnification and speech, now I don't have a lot of familiarity with this because I just a lot of it seems to be more of a European thing, but you also have Supernova. They're another um, product that's out there that different versions have just the screen reader, and then some have magnification features as well. So look at you have so many other features, and another thing besides learning to use Windows, a thing that we often tell people during in my day job is if you are a screen reader user, don't just learn one screen reader. If you are a JAWS user, don't just learn JAWS. NVDA is free. You might want to learn the basics of that too, because there are websites, there are programs that work better with one or the other. There are times where I will switch from JAWS to NVDA or vice versa. Um, Depends on the situation, but especially if you can't fall back on magnification and cheat like that, as a low vision user, if you have to just use screen reader, um, knowing multiple screen readers, even becoming familiar with narrator, that can save you. You know, something stops responding, you can switch to another one and figure it out. Um, and those are just the big programs. You know, you have now we have Be My Eyes for free in the Windows Store. Um, for Windows, I'm assuming that'll probably come to Mac at some point. At least I would hope maybe it would. But for now, it's on Windows and it's actually really helpful. You can figure out what is actually on the screen or what's in a picture. Like I said, I showed the video where I was reading comic books. That was pretty sweet. Um, and then you just have all the other little third-party utilities, you know, like there have been, you know, little third-party magnifier apps that I've taken a look at over the years, and you know, now the built-in ones, it's like, well, you may as well just use magnifier because it's pretty, you know, pretty good. And even Windows, you know, we talked about the Mac. Um, Not only do you have magnifier, but it does have some basic reading capability. So you want to read that long article, you want to proofread that document or email really quick, you can just have it read it aloud to you. You can adjust the mouse pointer size and color, and you can also do that for the text cursor. You can add those little wedges above and below the cursor so you can make it easier to figure out where you're typing. There are other low vision, you know, high contrast modes. There are, you know, light theme, dark theme. I think they still have, it's buried in there somewhere. I think they still have a mouse trails option. I can't even remember because I haven't played with that in probably 20 years. But like I said, there's just so much more variety in Windows. So, you know, if you get to this website or you get to this program that doesn't work and you're using JAWS or NVDA and you're like, ah, crap, now what am I going to do? At least there are alternative options that may be able to help you. And in addition to that, you know, you have things like scripting. So if you're in a job situation and you're working with a vocational rehabilitation agency, maybe they can help you get scripting for NVDA or JAWS so that a program can work better and you can either get that job or keep that job, um, because you can make your job more accessible again. Um, I mean, there are, as far as price goes, you know, you can get the Mac Mini for fairly cheap. I don't even know what a MacBook Air costs these days. But, you know, again, if you're looking at a new device, and cost is an issue, I would say Windows, you can get a better bargain. You know, I mean, yeah, you can get a MacBook Pro and everything, but by the time you do that, you're probably looking at 2, 3 grand. Um, you know, these days in 2024 here, we really don't recommend people get a computer that has less than 16 gigabytes of memory. I don't care if you're Mac or PC. 16 gigs of memory I would even say on Windows 32 couldn't hurt. And whatever computer you get, go with an SSD. Go with a solid state drive, because a traditional spinning hard drive is so slow compared. I mean, it is night and day difference. You get a solid state drive over a spinning drive, and you have enough RAM, your computer will just, it'll fly. Even when you're running assistive technology in the background. And that's something that people don't consider. Is you have to remember, if you're looking at what your average sighted person tells you about, oh, this is the kind of computer you should get, this is the specs you should get, maybe you need 8 gigs of RAM, maybe you need whatever. You got to remember that they're looking at it where they can just look at the screen and click, click, click everywhere. As a blind or low vision user, not only are you using your Microsoft Office, your browser, your games, your apps, your whatever, you are often running a screen reader, a screen magnifier, or both. I use NVDA and magnifier a lot in conjunction with each other, both at work and at home. So if you're running these, some programs that are more memory, that are a little more greedy with the memory, and then you're running assistive technology on top of that, you kind of want to have a little bit more wiggle room. You want to have that extra bit of RAM or memory, go with your 16 or 32 gigs of memory, because you're using stuff in the background that your average sighted person doesn't have to use, doesn't have to worry about. So that's another reason that, again, you look at not just the assistive technology itself or the operating system itself, but really what you're doing and how much resources you really need to make your computer run well and make it an effective experience. But again, price-wise, I think you're probably going to get a better deal with Windows, because you can get anything from $200-300 all the way up to I for my desktop computer here, I put a little over $3,000 into the thing. Most people aren't going to need that, but I wanted a lot of storage. I wanted a really high-end video card for playing games and doing accessibility testing and consulting for games. But I mean, I would say between $700 and $1,200, you can get a really good Windows machine. And not only do you have narrator and magnifier as a free option, but if you're a screen reader user, NVDA is also free, and it's very good. I use NVDA almost every day, pretty much every day. And both of those are free. So not only do you have free built-in options like you do on the Mac, but you also have some free accessible third-party alternatives. So you got a little bit more choice there. But keep in mind, you also get what you pay for. Just because you can get a $300-400 computer does not mean I would recommend it. I have this Surface Go, which I got through Microsoft as part of my consulting with them. I love the form factor. It's actually really nice. It's a very, very nice little portable Windows tablet. But I pretty much almost want to retire it because it's almost unusable now. The thing came with 4 gigs of RAM. I don't remember the last time I had a personal computer that had 4 gigs of memory in it. It's been at least 10, if not 15 years since I've had a computer that had less than 8. And you're running Windows 10, Windows 11 on 4 gigs of RAM? I don't think so. You can kind of get the basics done, but you're not going to like it. It's going to be slow as hell, and you're not going to like it. So, again, it's partly you get what you pay for, too. You really want to, again, 16 gigs of RAM right now, a solid state drive. I mean, they're becoming so much standard right now that SSDs are not hard to come by. So, I would say probably between $700 and $900, $600 and $900, you can, or $1,000, you can, within that price range, you can get a computer that really runs great. So if you go too low, yeah, you'll have this cheap computer, but you're probably going to be like, well, and then people will say, well, Windows sucks because I have this computer and it's a piece of crap. It doesn't run slowly and blah, 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 blah. Well, no, it's not Windows. You just cheaped out and, it's like, yeah, you save some money now, but it's going to cause you much more of a headache later on. So there's those things to consider. It's not just go buy the cheapest thing possible, go buy the most expensive thing possible, go buy this platform or that platform. These are the kinds of things that I try to get people to consider when they're looking at, knowing what devices they want or need. So that kind of covers the computer side of things. I mean, there are, of course, other there are other things like screen size, the keyboard layout. Do you like the keyboard that it comes with? Like I had a client who requested a very specific model of computer, which their counselor approved. But come to find out, I didn't realize, but we got it in and they're like, oh dear, this could be a problem. Thankfully, they were low vision and they actually just put some bump dots on and got around it. But a lot of people don't like the Mac Touch Bar that they had for a while. Well, there was this Dell, I don't remember, was it an Inspiron? There was a Dell model where the function keys, your F1 through F12, were not even physical keys. They were just this touch-sensitive bar above your number rows. And it was a royal pain to be like, oh, I need to do Alt F4. I need to do whatever function key. You kind of developed a muscle memory for it, but it was a pain. So I would not recommend that computer, especially for a screen reader only user, because it would drive you nuts. So those are the things that that just shows you there's a lot to consider when you're thinking about a computer. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wrap up this video here, and I'm going to split this series into 2 parts because, again, I went into a lot more detail when just considering computers. We'll talk about mobile in the next video, but I'm going to split this into 2 parts so that if people are looking for a new computer or are looking for a new smartphone or tablet, you guys can just load whatever video that you want. But I would highly encourage people to watch both or refer people to both. So let's wrap this one up here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it helpful. Please pass it along to others, whether professionals, friends, family members, if they think this type of video would be helpful. And like I said, I just hope this was something that people could get a lot of information out of and it helped out. But give the video a like if you did. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79, twitch.tv/illegally-cited, illegally-cited.com, and right here on YouTube. And I will see you guys next time for the next one for mobile accessibility. Later.